So, am I recording? Let's see. Yes, great. So greetings, everyone. As I mentioned before, my name is Obdin Mundezier. I am the oral history manager at the Weeksville Heritage Center. And just want to welcome you to the Weeksville Heritage Center virtually. We usually do these workshops at the site, but obviously that is not an option at this moment. And we're just really happy to have you here. What we're having today is a digital research methods workshop with Dr. Robin Naughton, who I will introduce shortly. And this is part of the Legacy Project Public Training Program. And the Legacy Project itself is this grant-funded program, Mellon-funded grant-funded program that allowed Weeksville and the Weeksville Heritage Center to introduce our audiences and community members to our archives, and also the idea of archiving. So, having people become their own archivists, historians, and storytellers of their own personal history, as well as their family history. Just because we understand for people of color, especially Black people, the idea of telling one's family's history is a restorative act, especially in the Western world. And, you know, the way that we've been doing that is in the last few years, we have always been offering workshops in oral history, genealogy, digital storytelling, and research methods. And this year is, we have provided some of these same offerings with the first workshop we did in October was on oral history. The following one was with social media and archival digging with Olawanasola Olasunde. And then recently we had Jermaine Dennis provide a workshop on genealogy. And today we have Dr. Naughton, who will give a workshop on digital research methods. And then next month, let me see, as I click, there we go. We will have a workshop on genetic genealogy with Dr. Doris Withers, which I will provide links to that at the end of this presentation. And the last thing I'll mention before introducing Dr. Naughton is that at the end of the workshop, so by 7 o'clock, I will provide, or by 6:30, I will provide a survey for those that live in the 11213 and 11216 area so that they can receive a free archiving, personal archiving toolkit, which it's basically a flash drive, it's hard to describe it, but it's a device that will allow you to easily scan photos with your phone, as well as an adapter so that you can use it to read micro SD cards, and USBs. And the idea of providing this kit is so that people who have attended these workshops actually have the ability to preserve their work in a safe place, because you know, working in libraries and archives, one of the rules we have is locks, which is lots of copies keep stuff safe. And that is something we want you to have while you're on this journey of personal family preservation. So without further ado, I would love to introduce Dr. Naughton. She works at Queens College and has a PhD and is very experienced in user-centered research and has been doing so for 20 years. And her last project before working at Queens College was working with the medical library in New York, or the New York Academy of Medicine library, to help build their digital lab. And I think from there, I'll let her take it away and conduct a workshop. I'm really excited for this. Just know at 7 o'clock we will have, or towards 7 o'clock, we will have a Q&A and that you are allowed to ask any questions that you want in the chat. I will make sure to line them up during the presentation and that they're asked at the end of the workshop. And from there, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to allow Dr. Naughton to take it away.
Thank you, Upton. Very nice to meet everyone. I'm going to share my screen now. Hi. So I'm going to talk a bit about the digital research methods and walk you through a couple of tools that are free and available that you can use in your work and in your research. How this overall presentation is broken down, there's a technical knowledge survey, and the URL for that was put into the chat. There are 5 questions, and I'll go through those questions. So if you can take the survey, that would be great. It helps me to kind of gauge technology use and comfort level with technology and any kind of information or types of technology tools that you're interested in. So I can use some of that information to kind of talk a little bit more throughout the presentation. The introduction, I'll talk a little bit more about myself. And I will also ask everyone to just kind of put some information about themselves in the introduction. And it's just 3 pieces of information. And then I'll go into more of a presentation style, and then we'll go into discussion and questions. So that's kind of the big view of what we're gonna do today. So for the technology survey, it's at this URL, which should be in the chat. And these are the questions that I'm going to ask. There are 5 questions total. The last piece of information on the survey when you go to the Google form is your name, and it's optional, so you don't have to put your name in. But if you wanted to, feel free to do so, or you could put a name that you like. It doesn't have to be yours. So the first question is, on a scale of 1 to 5, what is your comfort level with using technology? And I want to understand this because this tells me how you feel about technology, whether or not you use it a lot, or whether it's something that gives you some comfort, or you're just kind of neutral about it, or you feel uncomfortable even trying to attempt to do certain things. And I believe that you're all on this presentation on Zoom, so you're probably not very uncomfortable with it, but you might have some comments on that. Please rate, it actually says just please select rather than rate your technology skills according to the following. And this is just a breakdown to say, I'm new, I am a beginner, I don't have any technology skills, or I have some technology skills and I'm starting to learn more, or I have some, but I still need help. I have skills and I can do most of what I need, or I am advanced and I have good technology skills and I can help others learn. This will help me to understand in terms of where you are with new technology or current technology, what level, as you see yourself, what level it is. The third question is, how often do you use technology or digital tools to accomplish your goals? And the answer could be never. I never use these tools. I use traditional pen and paper to do most of what I want. Or it can be, I use it sometimes, so I use it for some things. I don't use it for other things. Or I'm always using some kind of technology or some kind of digital tool to do what I want to do and what I want to accomplish. And the last 2 questions are, what technology or digital tools do you currently use in your work or your personal life? And this is just an open text field because I just want you to list things. So whatever it is that you currently use, whether you use it for work or whether you use it for research or you use it for your own personal thing, there might be an app that you really like that makes your life a lot easier. I have one such app. Then it would be good to know what those are. And for question 5, what digital tool or technology would you like to learn to help you with your goals? So if you have particular goals and you think, oh, maybe learning this tool or getting a better handle on this app or any of these things will help me with my goals on what I want to accomplish, particularly thinking about doing the kind of research that you're looking to do and really engaging in material, is good to know that. Because if there's something that if there's a tool that we could help with, I think that's something that would be quite beneficial to help you get up to speed so things become easier for you. All right, so I'll take a little breath there and give people a chance to click on the link and go to the form and fill it out as best as they can. Okay. I see there's a raised hand somewhere. So
Do you want me to unmute?
yeah, let's do it. It'll take a minute or two, just kind of help people get acclimated.
All right, I'll unmute him.
Hello. Sorry, I was just quick question. Having a little issue accessing the link,
Oh,
and it's
okay.
and I think this says the chat is disabled.
Thank you. I can enable it.
Okay.
That's helpful. Is anyone else having any problems or issues? We can just do a check on that. Okay. So maybe we can share the link again, just in case if you just came in, you might not have seen the link originally.
I'm gonna share.
So we'll do that again. And the chat's enabled now as well, right, Upton?
Yes, it is. And for those who are saying they're unmuted, we generally leave people on mute until we reach the Q&A portion at 7. So if you do have a question that you want to verbally produce, just raise your hand and I will unmute you.
Okay, so the introduction piece of this presentation. What I wanted to do, I think if we'd done this in person, we might have gone around the room and, have everybody do a little bit of an intro. But since we're doing this virtually, I want to do it a little virtually as well. And so there are 3 pieces of information I think I'd ask you to share in the chat, which is your name, your location, and what you hope to learn from this workshop. I think that would be helpful in terms of just kind of getting a sense of what people are looking to understand and learn more from. It'll also help if there's something that you're interested in learning as I go through the presentation, I can better see if I can talk about that topic or that piece of information while I discuss the presentation. And so I'll tell you a little bit about me. This little image graphic here on the side is example of some of the things I've done. So I started as basically an English major is what I like to say. I started at Brooklyn College and I was an English major there. But while I was doing that work, I was also working in e-learning in technology. I worked for Kaplan at that time. And in doing my work at Kaplan and teaching English, one of the things that really kind of came to my attention was this idea that we were not at that time really helping people to learn how to use technology for their work. And so one of the things I did at Brooklyn College is I ended up teaching hybrid courses. So I taught English literature with technology and really try to bring that into the conversation. This was a long time ago. And the other thing I did is I created a graduate technology and writing workshop. And that graduate and technology and writing workshop really tried to merge the two pieces of information. So it was specifically designed for graduate students at Brooklyn College who were coming back to college after many years of not being in college. And many of them have not used any technology in their work or anything like that. So suddenly they were in college doing graduate work for their specific domains and areas, which they didn't really require to use any technology. But suddenly at that time, they were being asked to do a lot of work in technology and to use email, to use this tool or that tool, and they didn't quite know how. And so as part of the graduate dean's office, I got a grant to help kind of facilitate this understanding and to train these students into, how to use technology for their work and play. And I merged that with the literature because then they can, they can learn the English and the writing and how to do proper citations and all these sorts of things, but they can also learn the technology that helps them to do it faster, more efficiently, and continuously. Which all this is to say that led me on this path of thinking of ways to use technology to enhance learning and to enhance work for any and everyone, and to make life easier ultimately. And I've done digital project management work. I've done teaching. I've done learning. I really started my work as a software developer. So I've done a lot of system and content management systems and a lot of work. And what I do now, and my most recent position, I worked for New York Academy of Medicine and I ran their digital program. And that program was very much focused on digitization and cultural heritage and rare books and manuscripts. And one of the things I did there was really build a digital lab so we can digitize materials and make those materials available and publicly available to anyone who wants to see it. And in my current position, I am the Queens College Library. I'm the Web and Digital Services librarian there, and I run, basically, I manage the website and I do a lot of that stuff. And some of the integration in terms of thinking about how do we really help to provide and make available all this information that we have, all this digital material that we have, and in what ways can we really highlight these collections and so forth. So I will stop there for a moment just to make sure that everyone got the link okay and sharing very well. Awesome. So up then I'm gonna ask just for a little bit of what are some of the things people are asking that they'd like to learn from this workshop, so we can get a little bit of that.
We have a lot of people are within the same tribe of being interested of learning about their family history. So we have Tanya Caston, who's looking to find more information about her family history. She's a first generation Haitian American, ça passe, where I see aussi. We also have Jay from Raleigh, North Carolina, not Raleigh, learned that the hard way. He has an oral history project and he just wanted to learn more information on research and digitization strategies. We have a lot of people who want to make digital personal archives. So that's really nice to hear. So we have, and another person like that is Hollis Gentry of DC, and she just wants to learn how to use technology to create a family archive for her research, families, and like family mementos, as well as ephemera, which is, and stuff like that. And then we have someone whose name is A from Brooklyn, and they just want to use technology to do research on their ancestors.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. All right.
Yeah.
So the first part of this, I'm talking a little bit about just file management and naming conventions. And this is about just organization and getting your project organized before you dive into the research and what you want to do. And I'll talk a little bit about storage and preservation. Um, so in terms of file management, the questions that you will ask, and the reason why you want to do this sooner rather than later is to figure out how are you going to organize your information, and how you organize your information will help you to organize your thoughts on it and how to really structure it, so that when you are in the heart of doing data collection, or you are really going out there and you're constantly finding information, you have a place to put it and you know exactly where to put it. So the first thing to ask yourself is, what folders will you have? How will you structure this? Are you what kind of hierarchy do you need for this project? In thinking about that, this image here is just a folder structure image, but it really starts to come down to getting a structure that will help you in the long run in the way you work with information. And one of the things I suggest is that to keep your first level very short. One of the things you start to learn over time is that, we get a folder, we put everything in it, or we put a lot of folders, and we just keep adding stuff because you're like, okay, this is where I'm going to put stuff and I'm just going to put it there. But if you think about how you want to organize that before you start, you can say, okay, these are the folders I'm going to need. And you can always add a folder or add more information, but you want to start with a place where this is what I'm going to do and this is how I'm going to organize it. And one way to do that is to say, okay, whether this is a project or whatever title you have for it, that's the top level. And then within that, you're doing certain kinds of work, and you can organize it based on that kind of work. So for example, in this image, what you see is that it says projects, and I organize on a project level. I come out of project management, so just about everything is a project, and it helps to keep things structured in that way. And this particular project, I'm going to call it genealogy. And within that, I know I'm going to have images. I know I'm going to do some interviews, so I should have a place for interviews. I know I'm going to do certain kinds of research, and I should have a place for that. And if there are other parts, as you think about your project, if there are other pieces of information that you're going to participate in and you're going to do, you should create a space for it. So that way, once you've created that space for it, when you're in the process, when you're in the thick of it, you can easily say, okay, I know I just dropped this in this folder. It's exactly where it needs to be, and I can find it easier. The other thing about folders and thinking about it is that you can nest folders as you need, but try to be careful in terms of nesting too many, because then suddenly you're clicking forever to get to the thing that you want, or you're spending time searching for stuff. And one of the things why file management folder structures become so cumbersome is that many times we design it for storage and for putting things away, but we don't design it for retrieval, which is much of what information management is about. Is how do you find this again? How do you get it again? And how do you design it so that in 6 months you can easily go and say, oh yeah, I know exactly where this is. And that's the idea behind folder management. And you can customize it based on your project or based on the thing that you're doing, so that it is very clear to you how you organize your information and how you can find that information once you put things in there. The other question that you want to ask is like, how do you name these things? And you want to give your folders good contextual names. And what that means is that if you look at the folder, you can tell immediately what it's about, what should be in there. If you look at my images folder, it should just only have images. So I know, okay, if it's an image, it goes here, I'm going to go there and I can find it. Same thing with interviews. If I'm doing interviews and I'm talking to people on a regular basis, I want to know that if I do an interview, all the materials associated to that interview, I put into my interviews folder so I can easily get there and retrieve that information easily. So that's kind of a contextual view. And so you want to think in this way, that if you can structure it and name your folders in such a way, it makes it easier for you to find things later. And I think a big part of it is trying to find things later and keep the name short. Yes, you can have long titles, but one of the things about file and naming conventions is that long titles can become cumbersome. So you want to keep it short and you want to keep it consistent. So if you're doing this kind of structure for multiple types of projects, you want to say, okay, this is my method. You know, I always have an images folder. I always have an interview folder, and this is what I do. Or I have folders with, with not too many words, that is easy for me to remember and to understand what's in it. The next piece of information that I have here is really getting into the actual file and the file name convention. So naming conventions are really a method to help keep consistency and also to make sure that your information is consistent across and also works with systems. Um, you know, so the question is, how are you going to name your files? And so one thing you can say is like, I don't know what I'm going to have. And this is true. But what you can do is start to think about ways to name your files, the kind of files that you think you're going to have. And if you think of different ways of naming that file, then you have a convention. And so when you get a file that comes in, you say, oh, you know what, this is this type of file. I name these kinds of files in this way. And if you have that convention for your work, then it's much easier to say, okay, oh, my files are named this way. These kinds of files go into this kind of naming convention. And the reason for a naming convention is manifold. And there are a couple of things I can suggest in terms of thinking about that. And that is include some contextual information. If you do systems work, many of the files don't include contextual information because it's easier for machines to understand it. If you're doing people work, you should put some contextual information so it's easier for you to understand it. So that way you know what that file is about and what it means. Don't use special characters. And the reason that you will see this throughout is not to use special characters, because special characters, and these are the percents and the question marks and the parentheses and the hash signs, these special characters can create problems for your files. It can create corruption. So suddenly your file will not open and it will not work the way you expect it to work. If you're putting this on a web or something like that, that can interfere with the system processes, because some of these special characters are used in the back end of systems. So you want to not use special characters. You can use underscores to separate different pieces of information. You can also use a hyphen, but the underscore, if you see in the examples on the right, it helps with the space, and so you're not using spaces. And spaces, what happens with file names that have spaces, when you go on the web, it puts a %20 for that space, because that's the character for space in the system. So you may send something that has a space in it, and someone might try to click on it or do something to access it, and then it doesn't work. And it's because the system expects no spaces. And so if there is a space, it put characters into that space to make sure that it has that style that it expects. So for your file names, particularly file names that you think you're going to use or going to have web enabled and have available, try to replace your spaces with underscores. It still looks like a space visually a little bit, and so you can see the separation of information. If you include a date, start with the 4-digit year followed by the month and then the day. And this is a suggestion. This is not something you have to do, but the suggestion to do that, it helps organize your file for you in a very fast and efficient and chronological way. So if you want something to be organized by date in your folder structure, in your file structure, and you put the date on the file name of that item, then if you put the year, then it'll organize it by year, as opposed to if you put the month first or you put the day first, because it is alphabetical. So it will organize it that way. So if you start with the year, the example that you can see here is this last one on the bottom. If you start with the year, then these numbers will sort and filter as you need it to. The three examples that I have here are very different kind of naming conventions. And this is just to say that you can decide what this naming convention is. And once you decide it, then you use it on a consistent way. So you can decide that if you're doing research and you find a piece of information. So this one is from one of the sites I'm going to go to. And this is the author's last name, followed by the date of the publication, followed by a short title for that publication or that piece of information. So if you know that I'm gonna go and I'm gonna do all these searches, I'm probably gonna pull some of this data down, I'm gonna have to store it. And the way they provide the names in the systems are not the most easy, and it doesn't function for you because you're like, I don't understand why they named it this way. Then you want to say, okay, this is how I'm going to name my files, because then I'm going to understand exactly what it is, where I got it, and what it's doing. Because sometimes when you download, you'll get a long string of characters. It has no name, no anything. So you want to think about that when you pull information down. The other example here is a project kind of naming convention. So if it is a project and you want to indicate that this project is part of of something that you're doing and you want the files to reflect that, then you can put in the project name and the different sections and any kind of data information that you want. Organization, this is also another way of doing it. If you want to, here in this third example is the capital letters. It's recommended to use lowercase for file names. It's easier because some systems are case sensitive. And if the systems are case sensitive, if your file is named with the capital W and you do a lowercase w, you can get access to the file. So in many cases you use lowercase, but you can, if you want to differentiate without using underscores or something like that, there are camel case, which is what this style is, and you do capital letter for words or phrases that you want to visually showcase in that way. Now, what information do you want? One of the things that I want to think about is, do you want this to be something that you get in that can be at the end of your naming convention, it can be at the beginning, wherever you put it. But if you know, for example, let's say you're doing something that has a lot of images, and I've done a lot of work with a lot of images. And so you go images or 300 images, and you need to make sure that that's consistent. I think I just got dropped, didn't I? Hello?
You're good now, but I think you're good now.
Okay, I'm gonna go back in and do the shared screen. There we go. That's where we were. How far back? What was the last thing you heard?
The last thing I heard was you were talking about how Junkie says tracking. I remember you talking about the fact that you worked with a lot of images.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you, Hollis.
So
Thank you, Robin.
Yes, I worked with a lot of images. And what I was saying about tracking is that if you know you're going to have something that has many items and your naming convention is that, okay, I'm going to name all of these things very similarly, but I want to just have a tracking number at the end of it. So it's image 1, image 2, image 3, image 4, image 5, image 6. What you want to do is just use leading zeros and so if you think, so if you have 100 images, do 4 characters, so you have 0 to 100, just in case you go over. And that 0, similar to doing a year first, will help to organize your images by those numbers. So you system and the way you track it. In terms of tracking, so how are you going to track all this information? And one of the things I say is create a tracker. And what a tracker is basically a spreadsheet or any kind of tool that can help you keep track of what you're doing. And one of the things you'll find is that if you go to websites and you download some of the data or the metadata, it will usually download as a CSV, and it's like a spreadsheet, and they have all this information in it that may or may not be of value to you. The idea of that spreadsheet and that information, that's the metadata, in being able to design something like that for yourself. So how would you do that? You decide, okay, I am going to do this project. I am going to have a lot of images. I need to have a naming convention. I need to have it consistent. So I'm going to put that in one column in the spreadsheet. I need to know, the name of this item. I'm going to put that in a different column. You know what? I need to find out who the author is, and I need to find out what date this was, and I need to find out, I need a short description. So each of these would represent a column for that item. So when you do your work and you're going through and you're finding information, you can easily fill that information out. So if you ever had to do kind of a quick look back on what it is that you're doing and what you've captured, it was like, how many of these do I have? What are the names and the titles? Did I get this person's information that I'm looking for? You have some place to go and reference, and some place that helps you keep track of what you're doing. And so in terms of that creation of that track, it's very specific to your own work and to what you're trying to do. The other thing that a tracker can do that you can do in there is you can put the steps that you need in your process. So you can say, this is this is a step I need to take. I need to go to this site, do this search, and pull this information. This is the next thing I'm going to do. You know what? I have a physical object. I need to scan this. I'm going to put that as a step that I need to do. So as you go through the spreadsheet from one side to the next, it tells you exactly what information you have and what you need to do. So that's a general sense of what the naming convention of file and folder structure. And if you spend the time up front to do this, one, conceptually, you'll organize your project a lot faster in this way. And when you're in the heart of doing the research, you have the space for where things go, because sometimes you'll go into the research and you're like, okay, where do I put this? How does this fit into what I'm trying to do? And so you have a overarching organizing principle on that. Storage and preservation. So the questions that you want to ask yourself here is, where will you store your information? And this is a very good question. So you go, you do a search, you pull down information, where do you put it? And where do you continue to put it so that you know you have it and you know it's stored appropriately? So you can think of storage in three kind of ways. The first way is to think of it in terms of local storage. And that means it's saved on your computer somewhere, whatever you're working on, that's where you save it. You can think of it in external storage. So maybe you have an external hard drive or a micro SD card or a flash drive or something, and you're putting it on there. And then you can think of it as cloud storage. You have a Google, you have a Microsoft, you have a Dropbox, you have, some one of these cloud storage, Amazon Web Service, or any of these that you're storing it on. And I will have to repeat what is known throughout systems. You want to have multiple copies. And for preservation, you want to really think about that and think about what that means. And, how do you preserve this information? What are you going to do to make sure that you have you're going to make sure you have backups. So if you're storing it on your computer, make sure you store it on another type of system. Make sure you have an external drive, or you back it up to the cloud in some way. So that way you have backups, and you can set up certain kinds of backups. So your machine, you should be backing up regularly. So that way you do a backup to a system. So you have a backup. So if anything happens to your machine, you have a backup, so you can always get it. Especially if you do all this work and you put it on your machine and suddenly the blue screen of death shows up and you didn't back it up, it is very stressful, because suddenly all the work that you've done that is stored in this machine is no longer available to you. It has disappeared, your computer's corrupted. What do you do? So this is why you want to make sure you have multiple places where you store information and have it be consistently backed up in a way that you can always access it. So if one goes down, you have the other or the others. So you can have many spaces. In digital preservation, we talk about location. So one of the backup in digital preservation is that it is like physically not in the same city as each other. So if you use Amazon Web Service, the backups and the redundancies are not physically stored in the same city. So if the one city goes down, which has been known to happen, your information is still stored someplace else that is hopefully has not gone down either. So you think about location, you think about how you keep your information. The other thing that I have here is metadata, and it's really like metadata and documentation. The information that you capture a lot from these sites and that you download, it's all metadata. And metadata just means data about data. So this is the titles, the naming convention, the description, all the information that you have about this particular piece of item. This is your metadata. And you want to also make sure that you're tracking that. And that's why my suggestion is to create a tracker, because the tracker can hold your metadata for you and you can update it and clear it. But you can also make sure that you back it up and you preserve it so that it travels with whatever item you have. So this example, I wanted to share this because this is Vivian Meyer, and she is the woman here with the camera. If you have not heard of Vivian Meyer, it is an amazing story, and you should spend some time looking her up. There is a link here to her website. And the reason I brought this up is because Vivian Meyer, she died in 2009. Slightly before she died, she was born in New York. She was born in the Bronx, and she spent much of her childhood in France, and she wanted to be a photographer, really. And when she came back to New York later, she pretended she was French. So everyone thought she was French, and she became a nanny. But she started taking photographs, and she took photographs at a time when really we don't do this kind of street photography anymore. And so these photographs were amazing, and she got really up close and personal with life in New York City in the 50s. And so her photography is really amazing. But one of the things that you learn as you learn more about her is that she never produced any of her prints. She never printed anything. She took the photographs, she saved the negatives, and ultimately what happened, which is this fellow named Malouf, he went to basically a sale one day. So she had a storage locker, all her stuff was in the storage locker. And I'm gonna move a little faster because I know we're getting close to time. All her stuff was in the storage locker. He goes and he buys the storage locker, and then he unpacks the storage locker and discover hundreds of rolls of film. And that discovery led to these prints that you see here. And so an entire museum, I bring this up is to talk about preservation, because one of the things that she was good at, she was meticulous at keeping things. And so she kept all her negatives. She never developed them, but she kept them all, she organized them, and she put them into a structure. So the fact that when he bought this storage unit, and found all these all these negatives and developed it, there was a structure to it. There was an organization, and she made sure that they were preserved in that format so that they can survive as long as they did, because that was within the last 10 years this happened. And so just thinking about that structure and thinking about preservation, you start to understand this is available because she kept a good preservation practices, but also when he found it, he was able to print and make it available to others. So even though she didn't really get a chance to do it, it was done and it's available for a lot of people to see. And now I know you guys want to get to the core of all of what we're supposed to be doing. So research. So there are two things. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go through a couple of sites and a couple of places where you can find information. One of the parameters, and when you're doing your searching, keywords are generally the default that you find on search engines. So anytime you go to Google or anywhere and you type something in, it's usually a keyword search. My recommendation is that as you get more into this, you want to do some more advanced searching, which will help narrow your result set, and it will help you better focusing on what it is that you want to do. So exact phrase search is usually the quotation marks that you put around a term or terms, so that way when it does the search, it looks for exactly that. And then you have your Boolean operators, which is the and. So if you want to do an and search, so I want to find this and that. Or search, I want to find this or that. So you can get one or the other when you get your result set. And then not. We don't use the not enough. We should use the not more. But that basically says, I want to find this, not that. So if when it does the search, it'll look for this thing without that thing. And then the last piece is wildcard. So if you put an asterisk at the end of your search term, it will bring everything up, because the asterisk represents characters that are missing from the word. So it will bring anything up in that space for the asterisk, which can be any letter. And there's a variety of research methods, and I'm not going to go into this in all detail, but I assume that you're going to do some questionnaires and some surveys, because you're going to want to find out more information about what you're looking for. You're probably already doing interviews if you're talking to your family and trying to really dive deep into those pieces. There's web content analysis. This is really looking at the website and pulling information down from there. And this may be something that could become important depending on what you're doing, what context you're trying to get into. And I have drawing here because that's my thing. I believe in drawing, and it's a tool that allows you to say if someone is can visually represent an idea to you, it actually is quite valuable to see them put it down on paper. Now, I'm going to go to a couple of sites. So the first site that I have here is Digital Public Library of America, and that's DPLA. Now, let's see, let's click on this first. Come on. I will start screen share again. Sorry about that. We'll do it this way. Can everyone see my screen? Okay, great. So this is DPLA, Digital Public Library of America. I am not going to do any major detail searching. What I'm going to do is just go through a series of these sites. These sites are all publicly available. DPLA is it has a lot of resources that are that you can find information on, because what's going on with DPLA is that a lot of the cultural heritage institutions and a lot of the libraries are depositing their resources into this site. And this is a public site, it's open and you can use it and you can find a lot of things. One of my search criteria is usually just Guyana. So because I know there's not a lot of stuff out there about it. So I put it in and I want to see what's there. The other thing that the DPLA has, which they are thinking about, they have primary source sets. And what that means is that they have spent time curating certain kinds of information. And when they curate that information, if you're interested and you're working on a particular piece, or you're trying to find a contextual or historical understanding of a section, then you can go directly to one of these sets. I think my internet is a little slow, which is why this is taking so long to load. But you can go directly to a particular set. And so if you're doing research, you know, in a particular time period or on a particular person or a particular movement, you can come here and see if someone has curated that piece of information already and find it. If not, you can search the entire corpus. What I'm going to show you as well is that they also have, they are trying to reach out to people who are doing family research. And so they have this little section on how can I use DPLA for family research. And, you know, and it gives you kind of a how-to in terms of where do you want to look? Do you want to look at family photographs? Do you want to look at Bibles? Do you want to look at Civil War? And there are different places you can look to find more information about a particular item. In a general search, which is my general search right there. And this is a general, you know, a general keyword search to see, well, what's available in this site. I know we're at 7 now, and I will take another 5 minutes and show you guys some more sites, which is really why you're here. What this brings up, so this is the search results page, and this search results page will create for you, you'll have a method to refine your search, and this is by subject or by type, and type is, this is the format of the material. So if you're interested and you're looking for, you know, I need a recording of this person or something like that, you can do a search and see if they have those available to you. And you can do the subject search. The dates are very useful, because then you can narrow down your result set based on what year you're looking for. So if you're doing research on a particular year in a particular location, you can say, you know what, I need to know what was going on in, let me see what we have here. Yeah. Let's do, I don't know, let's say between 1980 and 1990. You can also narrow down the materials by location. So you can go very specifically into and this is the location that's on the record. So you can say, oh, I need Guyana, I need Suriname, I need Belize, wherever it is that you're looking for, United States. You can also narrow by language. In this particular instance, all my results are in English, but if you do other searches, it'll probably be in French and Portuguese or in different language. The contribution institution will tell you who has submitted this material to the Digital Public Library of America. What institution has submitted it? And so as you click through, you will find out where is this living, and that will give you kind of an insight in finding more. So an institution may submit it, and they may submit just some of it or whatever has been digitized, but the chances are pretty good they have a collection of that material. And if it's something that you need more in that collection or in that piece, you can always reach out to that, because I'll be able to digitize it for a variety of reasons, and so forth. The other side that I wanted
It looks like Dr. Naughton dropped from the call, but I'm going to, oh, she's back.
I apologize. I have no idea what's going on, but it's probably my internet access is freaking out right now because I'm talking. That's what's going on. But I'm gonna wrap her pretty quick right now because I know we want to open for questions. So I'll just go through. I'm not gonna do any searches, but what I'm suggesting is that you can do these searches. The Hadi Trust, can everyone see the Hadi Trust site? You can see it, right, Odin?
Yes.
Yes. So the Hadi Trust is also a publicly available resource. It is, the information that's deposited are from cultural heritage institutions, are from libraries, and it's across the world. So you can find things that are not just the United States, but across the world. So it's a good source for you. The third source that is very similar to that is the Internet Archive. And I always like to tell people to check out the Wayback Machine. If you haven't done it yet, just do it for the fun of it. What it is the Internet Archive, a part of their mandate, they're a nonprofit. And what they have done is they have been archiving the internet since the internet started. And so if there's a website that you're very curious about, put it into the Wayback and go there. And that comes in handy if, for example, you went to a website recently and there was a piece of information, like there was a report or there was something there and it disappeared. You can go and check the Wayback Machine and see if they have it, and you can pull it from there. So that also will help you in terms of information. But the Internet Archive, similar to the other three free options, will give you resources from a variety of places. It's also a space where you can upload stuff if you need to as well. And these particular collections here are different organizations who have uploaded information. But if you do a search on this, you can find a lot of information on it. And I'm going to do the Guyana search and then we're gonna move on. For each of these, you can find specific libraries or specific groups that are doing what you're interested in. And I think it's a good space to look for information. And for the Internet Archive specifically, you can download just about everything from the site. So if you find something, you can download that too as well. And I'm gonna leave that there because it's going slow. This is the Library of Congress website. This is just the kind of overview, and I'm gonna show you two other pieces of it. And one is the digital collection site. So similar to when I spoke earlier about the DPLA, where you have these sets. This is a very similar thing. A lot of digital collection sites are like that. So if there's very specific curated content that you're interested in, you can find that here. But the other thing that it has that is really cool and really valuable is newspapers. So they have a Chronicle in America newspaper set, and these are all newspapers from across the United States. I think it's basically from 1789 to 1963. So if you, and I do a search from here too, if my internet doesn't freak out. If you search across the United States, and you can find more information. I do think if you're trying to build context and understand the context of that time, newspapers are a good source to finding out and understanding that context and to learning more. And the last one that I'm going to put into this group is the National Archives. And let's see. And the National Archives, my internet is really slow today. The National Archives catalog is another place where you can go to do a search for historical material on a particular time period. Oh my goodness, on a particular time period. What I'm gonna do right now is I'm gonna stop the share on the websites, and I'm gonna open up the PowerPoint. But for So this is just kind of a screenshot. The PowerPoint presentation has all these sites listed into them, so you can take a look at them and you can get the links from there. But you are able to also search the National Archives for historical material, particularly around a particular context that you're trying to do. So the last piece of this, we talked a little bit about metadata and documentation, and it's just really, just make sure you document your information and keep good information and documentation on it. In terms of scanning and digitizing your materials, there are many ways to do it. And one of the ways that you can do it is if you have a scanner, if you have a camera, you can photograph materials and start to keep track of that. And it sounds like the package that you get from Weeksville will help you with that. And so you can make sure that you have outlets. And then sharing, you can share in many ways, and we can go into all the different ways you can share, but the thing you want to think about is, do you want this to be shared only with your family, or do you want it to be shared publicly with everybody in the world? And I will be done. That's questions and discussions. Sorry for the technical difficulties there. So I will open it up now for questions and any kind of discussion points.
Yes, and I'm going to allow folks to unmute themselves so that they can just ask him that way. So let's see. One question that we already have from Glenn is, could you explain the private sharing for families? And then he asked about password protected sites.
So one of the things you can do is you can say, so for example, I'll use Google as an example. If you use Google Docs or Google Drive, you can have a folder and you can store everything in that folder, but you can password protect that folder. So you can say, if you have this password, you can see the things in this folder and you can send that to your friends and family. If you want to keep things private, you can set it up so that you only share with very specific people. So there are sharing parameters that you can decide. You can say, I only want these people to see it, and I will send them a link directly to see it. Or you can say, if they have, if you're part of a group or something like that, you can share with the group. So there are levels that you can decide on. And a lot of systems today, particularly for consumers, have these options available. So you can say, I want to keep this private. I don't want to share it with anyone. I want to share it with these 4 people, or I want to make it public. And so you have those options. And even if you made it, if you say you want to share it with a large group of people, everybody needs a password to access it. So it's so those are some of your options that are available. Let's stop this. Where's the chat?
So a question from Simone is, do the catalog search sites have info on family and culture, or cultural, or just public?
So they have information. So first, the sites, all the sites I show you are public information. You can go to them at any time, and the information that's there is public. And so they have, many of them are from cultural heritage institutions. What that means is that they are focused on particular aspects of culture. And depending on what you search on, you will find which organization is focused on that particular aspect of culture. And what has happened is that, and when I say cultural heritage, I mean libraries, museums, organizations like Weeksville, nonprofits, and so forth. what they've done is that they've gotten a collection or something and they digitized it, and they say, I want to make this publicly available to everyone. And so they either put it up on DPLA, or they put it up on HathiTrust, or they put it in the Internet Archive. So anyone, anywhere in the world can go and find this information. And so if they have information about the kind of topics you're interested in, it will be available and it will be public.
Ooh, okay.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I don't know if I have an answer exactly for that, but I would certainly, if it's veterans, I would start with the VA, because the VA has put up a lot of, there's a lot of records there for the VA. I would also look at NYPL, the Schumberg, because Schumberg is focused on Black history and the history of African peoples. So they will definitely have historical records there. And this is the plug for New York Public Library. Get a card and you can use all their databases.
Yes, you can.
Yeah, that's a very good question. I like it.
Yeah.
And if I get a more specific answer, I will send it to Abden and he will share it.
Yes. So there are a couple of really good questions. There's one that well, first there is, what's the best way to archive photo scan originals or photograph of the photograph?
So you have to think of it in this way. If you have originals, it depends on how they were created. So you would want to take a look at that. There is image guidelines that the government puts out that are very specific to digitization, and it tells you what the fidelity is. And so, and I can send you a link to that as well, in terms of image guidelines, if you want to get really specific on that. If you take a photo of a photo, so your original photo is probably made in, especially if it's an old photo, it has, it's made at a different time with different kind of materials and different ways of doing that. If you take a photo of that, the new photo you're doing, and the question is, are you doing a print or are you doing a digital? And if you're doing digital, the digital preservation standard that we are using currently is called TIFF. And that is just a high resolution image, which allows it to survive a lot longer. So like a JPEG, a JPEG loses fidelity over time. So every time you open it up, it may distort the image, and over time, it will not be as good as it once was. Whereas the TIFF provides a stable image, so you can open it up and you can create images from it, and it still keeps that fidelity. So for digital, that's the method. For physical objects, there's a different methods, and in many cases I will punt to kind of archivists and conservators to talk more details about that, because that comes down to the actual physical material and what kind of material was used to print it, and what kind of material or any kind of acidity it may have, so that you can preserve it appropriately. So if you're doing preservation of like paper, and I will say this, 19th century paper is crap. So, but 4th century paper is amazing, because we still have all of those. And, 20th century paper is better. And there's archival quality papers. So maybe, you're looking at something, and the reason one organization digitized it is because it's 19th century paper and it's starting to fall apart and you can't see the physical. So they're like, let's digitize this before we lose it completely and it turns to dust. So it does depend on what the material is that you need to preserve and how you need to preserve it. But I can send the FAGI guidelines for image preservation and image digitization, if anybody's interested in that. It's a very long document, but it's very detailed.
One question that we have was, and Autumn, you might have to provide a little more context. What was the extension that you just mentioned?
The extension? I'm not sure. Oh, TIFF. Ah, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so that's yeah, that's an image. Yeah, yeah. I should remember that's called an extension.
And let's see. Another question that we have is it was sent to me privately, and I can help answer this question. But my question to Ms. Naughton is: did she personally do research on her own family? If so, how did she interview family or collect info, especially getting around stigmatization or especially getting around stigmatization or triggering trauma?
Ah. So I will venture to say that I have not gone into it. It's on my list of things actually with my brother and I. My brother is working on the family tree component and I'm working on the storytelling component of the project. And so what we've done so far, it's been something that we've been planning, but we haven't dived into all the interviews as yet. Because one, just even identifying people is hard to figure out who can really tell that story, particularly on our grandparents' side of the family. They're very few and far between, and no one really knows much about them. Um, so I have not done that. I've done interviews for other things, but I have not done the genealogy interviews at this time. But soon, it's on my list.
Yeah. And Hollis, thank you for providing that link. I'm
Yes.
guessing Hollis is a librarian. I'll wait for her to
Yes.
answer. But to piggyback on what Dr. Naughton has mentioned, um, I have conducted some interviews with family, um, and I have fielded this question before, and I've listened to a lot of experts who've done their own family history. See, yep, knew it. I've seen talk about recording family history, and it's, to be quite honest, it can be very difficult. Um, it's a very good question to ask about like dealing with trauma and things that are triggering. In regards to conducting an interview where you're talking about sensitive subjects, I would say that it is okay to go and ask questions about things that are traumatic, but you have to make sure that you leave the person out of that conversation. So like, if they're talking about a traumatic experience, like let them say their piece, like crying is a part of oral history, um, you know, um, and going through tough experiences is part of it as well, but make sure you don't leave it there. And then the other thing is if you're gonna collect an oral history with family and doing a family project, you have to be very, very explicit of what the project is about, because a lot of people think that you're just doing it to open like closet, like skeletons in the closet, or air out like dirty laundry, and you have to really express that like this is for posterity and for the future. So that's some of the advice I would provide in um, doing oral history work, especially for family history. And oh, last thing I'll mention is sometimes getting someone else to do the interview might be more helpful. Um, like, the dynamics that you have with family members may limit it that you won't get that much information. But like, if you have a spouse, like maybe it's easier for your family members to talk to that spouse. Or if you have a friend or a mutual family friend, maybe it's better to have them do the interview instead. So that's another thing to keep into account. Um, that's it. Um, this one's a good. This is from Erica Buddington. Um, first she says thank you very much for this, and then her question is, I'm looking for more archives on a black town that's disappeared. I found some info and images, but I'm in dire need of maps. Are there any archives that focus on geography specifically?
I can't think of one off the top of my head, but what I can say is um, historical societies are a good place to go. They usually, and a lot of the collections includes maps. So if you're looking for a particular scene in a particular thing that has disappeared, I start with a historical society in that community, because that historical society probably have collected that kind of information and collected those maps there as well. Yeah. Yeah, Hollis, thanks for that. The map division at the Library of Congress. That could be a place to look as well. But I do think if it's very specific to that community, you may want to take a look at their historical society.
Let's see.
That's a good question too.
So this question is from Darius Jean-Baptiste. Have you had any success researching ancestors in the Caribbean?
I think that's a good question. Not yet. What I am gonna say is, in terms of the Caribbean, I mean, it depends on where you're looking. One of the sites I was going to put up was the Digital Library of the Caribbean as a resource for finding information. Also, I think understanding the history, I think about Guyana a lot. And when you think about Guyana, a lot of the historical materials are Dutch, and there was a time when information was moved out of the country, so you have to find it. And so some of the information that you look for are in the British Library and some of the papers there. But I will venture to say I am still relatively new to this area in terms of doing genealogy research. And so I can provide more as I know more. But I do think the understanding the history of colonialism is helpful to understand what's there and what's not, and what's available directly in the country and what has been removed and exists someplace else. And I do think that's a way to do it.
And then Linda Fletcher asked, oh, I mean, I think this is for Darius, but like, did you use Afrogenis online? They used to have surname databanks. So there's Afrogenis and Linda. If you would be okay with unmuting yourself and talking a little more about this source, that would be really great. Linda? All right. Let's see. Are there any other questions? People,
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay. I did some genealogy research like 20 something years ago, 25 years ago, when the internet was very new. And there was a website that was doing this work very early on called Afrogenis. And you were able to go, they're still online. You were able to go through a data bank. You were able to email their email list, say that you were able to post information, what the surname you were looking for. And I mean, some of this stuff was happening before there was really a World Wide Web. They had what was called surname groups, where you could link up with other people that were looking for the same surname. So I was able to meet other people that were looking for the same last name that I was searching for. I don't know if they still have all that, because I was very early on. And they have that was the beginning of the development of the U.S. gene web, and people were
Mm-hmm.
putting information up every year. Now I have tons of files that have been in my storage space for about 7 years. So at some point, I want to get back into that information. But I haven't done any genealogy in a while, but I did. I was doing genealogy work in '95, and I was able to get a lot of information out of the archives in Washington D.C. There's all kind of documents. You can find out if any member of your family fought during the Civil War, and you can get those papers just by the last names. And I never did get those particular papers, but I did. From doing the research, I found out, well, with my family, with a lot of African American families, every generation they would name someone after an uncle or aunt. So I think in my mother's case, I found it looked like two of her great uncles. They both fought in the Civil War together, but I never
Mm.
did really get those documents.
Okay.
But it's tons and tons of documents. A lot of that stuff is in my storage space. You can get information on outrages that took place. I was able to get bride and groom lists, cemetery records. You can order people's private collections. I
And
did
this website was called Afrogenis.
Aphrogenis, right?
Yeah.
Let me.
So I mean, I think maybe one good thing would be is like look through look through the Internet Archive to see if they have um, anything related to that. And yeah, that might be a good place to start to see if it's on the Internet Archive at least.
Yeah, it used to be very, very, very active in '95. So, at the
Oh,
beginnings of people doing this research, yeah. But I was getting bride and groom lists, census data. Y- well, the first thing I did was you contact the county clerk's office and you find out what records they keep, and then they would tell you what records they would keep. And I was able to actually meet um, the historian for the particular parish. It was a parish in Louisiana called Bossier Parish. So I was actually able to actually meet uh, the parish. Well, they didn't call them counties, but they call them parishes. I was able to actually meet the parish historian, and then I was able to get if your family owned any land, you could get a lot of land records. You can get a lot of that, and then whenever someone would pass away, you can get those papers. So it's still a lot. I was able to get information in regards to. I mean, some of the things you find out when you're doing your family is just absolutely amazing.
hmm yeah.
Newspaper clippings. And one thing good about the parish historian, he would always send me information. When he would get stuff, and then you find out things that are very uncomfortable. And even if you're doing this work with your mother, but then what happened was I posted something uh, in a Louisiana site. It was a Gene Web when they were just starting, and 2 years later, someone contacted me. So, and they gave me what their names were, and I told them what my names were.
hmm
So then I contacted my mother, and then when I contacted my mother, she said yes, they are related to us, and it so happened that the woman that contacted me, her grandfather murdered my grandfather, and the two women were sisters. So it was very
Oh,
sensitive, and my mother was saying, "Well, I guess time heals all wounds." And she said when they were growing up, it was sort of like a big divide between the two families. And I actually got invited to a family reunion in Louisiana. So I went to a family reunion, and a lot of the people there acted like they had known me all my life,
Mm.
and I didn't even know they existed, and they didn't even know I existed. So I did meet family members, and and people tell you little stories here and there.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, Linda, thank you so much for sharing
Okay.
that.
Yeah.
Um, and we are at, I really appreciate like you telling that story. It kind of encompasses a lot of the things that were asked, and like especially the journey that you went through. And now I'd like to take out the time to thank Dr. Naughton for giving a wonderful presentation and workshop. And like to know, is there anything else that you would like to share?
I just want to say thank you to everyone. And if there's more information that you want, or if there's anything, I know there's a couple of links I'll probably send to Upton. Feel free to reach out.
Yep. And then, so I'm getting ready to share 2 links. The first one will be, I mean, I will make sure to send an email to everyone so that we can make sure to get these um, these kits out to the right folks. The idea is like, so please fill out this survey. Let us know how your thoughts on this type of workshop and this program and the connection, so we know how to um, enhance them in the future. And then please let us know your zip code, because if you're the 11213 or 11216 area, we will send you another email to get your address and then share with you the digital preservation kits. And then the other thing I wanted to share is the Eventbrite for um, the following events that we will be having at Weeksville. So the next workshop that we'll be having is on the 16th, will be about genetic genealogy. Let's see if, nope. With Dr. Doris Withers. I'm trying to get to, there we go. And I am also having internet trouble. There we go. Okay. So yes, genetic genealogy with Dr. Doris Withers. She is a professor emeritus from Medgar Evers and has given presentations at Weeksville before. And she will be talking about the benefits and things to be wary about and think about when you're doing this type of work, and like the doors that it opens. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is this Weeksville weekend on December 12th, we will be having Kwanzaa Fest, which will be amazing. We have an event or a presentation for each of the days. So for, Umoja, Guji Chakalia, Ujima, Ujama, Nia, Kawamba, and Imani. So please stay tuned for that. Hopefully throughout the week, through the actual days of Kwanzaa, you will be able to watch these videos because they will be available online. But please RSVP now. Just go to either the Weeksville webpage or the link that I shared in the chat. But please join us for this event. It'll be really amazing, and I'm excited for it, and hope that you will be in the community with us. And the other things I'll mention is that the PowerPoint will be provided through email. So again, if you signed up through Eventbrite, we have your email and we'll send it to you that way. So be on the lookout for that. Don't maybe check your spam because that happens sometimes. And I think that's it. So I will again thank everyone for yes.
Sorry, it looks like the survey is providing some trouble there.
Oh, the survey is.
It says it's editable and
It is editable. Okay, so I will reshare it so that it is not editable because you don't want that. Let's see. Okay, well, I will correct that. thank you for mentioning it. I will send another survey to everyone's emails as we're all registered. So thank you for mentioning that, Michelle. And yes, I will make sure to mention what is included in the kits in the email that I will send tonight. But again, thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and hopefully see you at other programming at Weeksville. And feel free to email us at research at weeksvillesociety.org if you have any questions in the work that you're doing. All right. So, all right, everyone have a good evening. Bye.
Have a good evening, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming out.
Okay, have a good evening.
All right, you too.